Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Facebook knows in acute detail that its platforms are riddled with flaws that cause harm, often in ways only the company fully understands. We're talking not just about Facebook, but also Instagram, and that is the central finding of a Wall Street Journal series, which is based on a review of internal Facebook documents, including research reports, online employee discussions, and drafts of presentations to senior management. The Wall Street Journal claims time and again, the documents show Facebook's researchers have identified the platform's ill effects. Time and again, despite congressional hearings, its own pledges, and numerous media exposés, the company didn't fix them. The documents offer perhaps the clearest picture thus far of how broadly Facebook's problems are known inside the company, up to Mark Zuckerberg, the chief executive himself. In fact, one of the internal findings reads as follows, quote, "We," referring to Facebook, "are not actually doing what we say we do publicly." It called the company's actions, referring to this internal confidential review, a breach of trust, and added, "Unlike the rest of our community, these people can violate our standards without any consequences." That's referring to the first item that we're discussing today, which is about the secret elite who are exempt from Facebook's rules. This includes a slew of popular celebrities, politicians, and world leaders across the planet who do not have to abide by the same rules that the rest of us do. And we're also looking at today how Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, not only knows that it causes problems, but has failed to do things to correct them, especially in regards to teenagers and their body image issues. This is both boys and girls. Ultimately, these problems at Facebook are connected to larger societal issues, and that's part of what we're going to be revealing today on The State of Us. This is the first episode of a three-part series from The State of Us that will cover the entirety of what's been released by the Wall Street Journal. This one is on our regular release schedule, but then you'll get the next two episodes over the next 2 Saturdays. So that'll be September 25th and October 2nd. You'll get an extra episode of The State of Us with the next 2 parts of the series. We're very much hoping you'll tune in. Without further delay, let's discuss the details of what Facebook knows and what they have and have not done to combat these issues. But of course, we couldn't begin this critical conversation without
TrueChat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, are Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook being hypocritical? Are they being contradictory? Are they outright lying? Those are just few of the reposts that we will use today and make today towards what's going on, because it is very disturbing when you think of the far-reaching effects of Facebook, not only in the United States, but more or less around the world, obviously. And that was news to me, but that is our word of the day, riposte. It is from the French. It's R-I-P-O-S-T-E, 2 syllables. The definition that we're using is a verb, and it means a sharp, swift response or retort. And I think that Facebook and Mr. Zuckerberg deserve many reposts today towards the evidence that's been put out there by this multi-story reporting in the Wall Street Journal. So without further ado, what do we mean that there's a secret elite that's exempt from Facebook? Doesn't Facebook say it's democratic, that it's the voice of the common people? How in the world then can there be special treatment for others if it's a democratic company?
It's a great question, Lance. I do want to remind listeners, though, that the word of the day is a competition. So at the end of the show, you'll have to see who won. Try to keep track. Lance is up 2-0 already on me, using the word riposte, which, as we've established, I'm sure will be relevant today because of the nature of the topic. And again, this is the first in a series, so there's more to come. We're looking at the elite section today, also the Instagram piece, but there's a good bit more yet to come out. So to answer your question, Lance, we all think, right, or I mean, we've all been told that Facebook has a set of rules and that everybody on Facebook has to abide by those rules. And in fact, they even took us so far as to believe that even people like Donald Trump have to abide by the rules, right? Because they suspended his account. Hey, you violated, our terms. And so you're suspended, because that's how we do things here. It doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States or whoever on the streets of Urbana, you're all treated the same, except that's a bold-faced lie because it's not true. The company has a program called XCheck or Crosscheck. It's spelled XCHECK. So however you want to say that, Crosscheck or XCheck. The program included most government officials, but it didn't include all candidates for public office. At times, it effectively granted incumbents in elections an advantage over challengers. The discrepancy was most prevalent in state and local races, according to internal Facebook documents. And employees worried that Facebook could be subject to accusations of favoritism. Again, these are not allegations, Lance, being made by some outside entity. These are Facebook's own words in its own internal reviews. Last year, the Crosscheck platform allowed posts that violated its rules to be viewed at least 16.4 billion with a B times, 16.4 billion times before later being removed. In addition, Facebook has asked fact-checking partners to retroactively change their findings on posts from high-profile accounts, waived standard punishments for propagating what it classifies as misinformation, and even altered planned changes to its algorithms to avoid political fallout. A December memo from another Facebook data scientist was even more blunt. Quote, Facebook routinely makes exceptions for powerful actors. This problem is pervasive, touching almost every area of the company. So in other words, Lance, if you're rich and famous or you're a politician, you don't have to play by the same rules as everybody else.
Well, now let's give both sides. To be fair, this program from Facebook was intended as a quality control measure for these high-profile accounts. So their rationale for starting this was really, really good. However, what it has ended up doing is shielding millions of VIPs from the company's normal enforcement, as the documents show. Many abused the privilege, posting material including harassment and incitement to violence that would typically lead to sanctions. And there are repeated examples in the article of famous people who have gotten this special privilege. And that it has gone all the way up to the president of Facebook. Is he the president, CEO? How do we refer to Mr. Zuckerberg? CEO, Mr. Zuckerberg. And he said, yeah, we'll just let it slide. So he's arbitrarily deciding that, well, we're going to take the president off, but we're going to allow these other people to put up nude photos or to give them a chance to have an advantage because why? We like their ideas? I mean, and again, I don't know, not to put innuendos or words into Mr. Zuckerberg's mouth, but it does seem ironic that you take away some people but you allow others to violate it. And when you know about the violations, when, according to the report, the violations were brought to your attention and you said, well, let them go on one count because they have so many followers, it's really making us a lot of money and I don't want to make those people mad. Wait a minute, do you have a set of rules or do you not have a set of rules? It's your company. This is what you're telling me. This is what you told Congress. Okay, this is the umbrella under which you say you are working. And then your internal reports show that that's not the way you're operating the company. I have a question. What are you doing? Just be honest with me. Okay. If you say, well, this is capitalism, I'm all about making money, so I'm going to protect the people that are making money for me. I'm like, okay, I got it. I understand. Now I know what your goal is. But when you tell me you're one thing and you do something else, that hypocrisy or lying is very unsettling to me.
The other thing that became of concern is that not all of this information has been directly shared with its ethics board, which was set up and we covered a while ago, which is supposed to be this independent portion of Facebook that has the ability to make recommendations, review accounts. For example, they're the ones that reviewed the allegations against President Donald Trump and ultimately decided that, in fact, he was, suspended for the right reasons and that suspension should stand. But to Lance's point, there's different rules for different people. And it's almost hard to say that there's even rules for some of these because, again, according to Facebook's own internal documents, quote, we currently review less than 10% of X-checked content. In other words, if you're part of this group, there's a very good chance, a 9 in 10 chance, that what you put on Facebook is never reviewed by anybody for any reason. Ever. So effectively whitelisting you, right? And not only giving you leniency, but in many cases, not even reviewing your content in the first place to find out if it does in fact abide by standards. They explain one example, Lance, of what happened here was a very famous soccer player who has football player, depending on the part of the world you're in, has an account with over 150 million followers, right? And he was accused of sexual misconduct by a former girlfriend. So what he did, Lance, is he goes out, right, and says, I'm going to just show people what our conversation was. So he screenshots his communications with her, which includes nude photos, and puts them on Facebook. Now, Facebook's own internal system, right, identified that these could in fact be problematic, giving it as much as a 90 out of 100 chance that this should be taken down. Now, if that was Lance or I that had done that and posted this stuff, the minute that somebody else, one of you are very moral listeners out there, flagged this and said to Facebook, hey, I don't think this is appropriate, it would have immediately been suspended until a human could review it. That's not how it worked for this gentleman. It stayed up and received over 50 million views before Facebook decided to take it down, despite, Lance, and here's the big kicker, right? Despite human content moderators that work for Facebook, more than one, trying to take it down, but the system preventing them from removing it until somebody in upper level management would sign off on it being brought down.
Well, that's why people let their children on Facebook is because they're supposedly protected from those kinds of things, correct? I mean,
But it can be viewed 50 million times if somebody famous puts it out there.
Exactly. I mean, but that's my point is that I'm allowing, you can get on Facebook or Instagram because I know that they have morals and they're saying that this stuff's not going to be on there. And you just pointed out, well, yeah, actually it is. That's my response. That's my repost to this whole affair is you're selling me one bill of goods, but you're doing something totally different.
Well, Lance, my repost to what you just said is how the article ends here in the Wall Street Journal. And that is Facebook is trying to eliminate the practice of whitelisting. The documents show, and the company spokesman confirmed. Well, that sounds good. The company set a goal of eliminating total immunity for high severity violations of Facebook rules in the first half of 2021. However, a March update reported that the company was struggling to rein in additions to XCheck. VIP lists continue to grow. And one potential solution remains off the table, and that's holding high-profile users to the same standards as everyone else. Quote, we do not have systems built out to do the extra diligence for all integrity actions that can occur for a VIP, according to an internal memo. To avoid making mistakes that might anger influential users, this person inside of Facebook noted that they would instruct reviewers to take a gentle approach. Quote, we will index to assuming good intent in our review flows and lean into innocent until proven guilty, she wrote. The plan, the manager wrote, was generally supported by company leadership. As we talk about Facebook, though, it's critical to remember that Facebook isn't just the Facebook branded platform. It's also Instagram. And between these platforms, they touch billions of users worldwide. Next, we're going to look at Instagram and the fundamental role it's playing in how teenagers view themselves. Remember, this is the first in a 3-part series from the State of Us, with special edition episodes coming this Saturday, September 25th, and the following Saturday, October 2nd. You're getting extra episodes of the State of Us, so keep an eye out for those. What's going on at Instagram? How is it affecting today's boys and girls? We're about to find out. Keep it here on the State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are the State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
I think we did a pretty good job of issuing a strong riposte in the opening of today's show and explaining why Facebook holds all of its famous people or all of its X-Check, cross-check members to a different standard than you and me. But that's not where the problems end. As we identified, this is just merely the first in a series of episodes that will cover the series called The Facebook Files from the Wall Street Journal, that exposes in great detail internal company documents that demonstrate the company knows just how serious these problems are and what it's not doing about it. So Lance, tell us, what's the deal with Instagram and young girls and young boys?
Well, as you pointed out at the end of the first segment, researchers inside Instagram, so their own people, which is owned by Facebook, have been studying for years how its photo sharing app affects millions of young users. Repeatedly, the company found that Instagram is harmful for a sizable percentage of them, up to 40% of boys and an even higher percentage of teenage girls, and more so than any other social media platform. In public, though, Facebook has consistently played down the app's negative effects, including comments to Congress, and hasn't made its research public or available to academics or lawmakers who have asked for it. So here you go. We've looked at it, and yeah, we know it's bad, but when you ask us about it, we say, well, yeah, we don't know for sure. Well, will you please share your information with us so that we can do what's best for these young people who are using it in record numbers? And oh, yes, they are using it in record numbers. On average, teens in the U.S. spend 50% more time on Instagram than they do on Facebook. So when our lawmakers have done their job, and here on this show, we're always on the lawmakers to do their job, to actually make laws and look into things that will improve our lives. When they've done that, Facebook has said, yeah, well, we really don't know what's going on. Another lie, because these internal reports show that they do. And, well, can you share what you know? Well, we don't have anything. Again, not true. Facebook found that more than 40% of Instagram users who reported feeling unattractive and said the feeling began when they began to use the app. I mean, I didn't make this up, folks. This is what their own research found out. Okay? I'm not pulling this out. This is what Facebook internal review said.
Long before social media, I mean, we've known that for as old as time is, right? Teenagers have struggled with, how do I fit in? What's my place in the world? Where am I going in life? Do I stack up to my peers? They've always had these concerns, and many adults do as well, right? Not just teenagers, but particularly in your teen years, you're kind of sizing everything up, right? Figuring out how the world works. And this is making it even worse. And Facebook knows that Instagram is making it worse, right? They've tried a few things or entertained a few options, basically to no avail. Like one example was they thought, well, maybe if we remove or give users the option to remove how many likes they have. In other words, you can like something, and you can see that other people liked it, but you can't see how many people liked it, right? So that there's less anxiety over, well, so-and-so got 100 likes and I only got 10, or whatever. And they found out that had basically no effect, because the big thing, Lance, right, is understanding Instagram is a lot about lifestyle impressions. It has a lot to do with portraying a certain type of life, which means there's a lot of full body pictures on Instagram of you doing something, of you wearing something, of you being in a certain place. That's what you find a lot on Instagram. The difference between that and something like Snapchat is Snapchat focuses mainly on, and this isn't to say Snapchat isn't without its problems, but this is from the article from Facebook's own review, they identified that in Snapchat, a lot of people focus on selfies, right? Which would be, from like your neck up or your shoulders up. So your whole body's not in view. And also Snapchat focuses heavily on fun filters that obscure a lot of your face in different situations, or filter your face in fun ways that aren't intended to necessarily be as serious. So it's a little easier to deal with body issues because your body's not really as visible typically on Snapchat. Instagram's different. And it's a highly curated algorithm, and they talk a lot about this being an issue, right, Lance? Is the algorithm has learned that if, for example, you turn to Instagram because you're a teenager, you're looking at weight loss, now it's going to feed you an endless stream of weight loss experts. And it's not like these are vetted by any healthcare provider, right? I mean, this is just, whatever anybody says works. So, I mean, you could get served up videos on purging or, aggressive fasting that's beyond healthy. And you're going to see all these beautiful people that claim that it works, right? Because that's how I'm beautiful. So it's going to make you feel worse, and it may very well push to you very unhealthy ways of attempting to lose weight or improve your body.
And I want to go back to, you're exactly right, but I want to go back to Congress looking into this. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Marsha Blackburn called on Zuckerberg to release Facebook's internal research on impact of its platforms on youth and mental health. And Facebook got back to him in the letter and said, we would welcome the opportunity to work with you collaboratively. But Senator Blumenthal said that Facebook's answers were so evasive, failing to even respond to all of our questions, that, quote, Facebook seems to be taking a page from the textbook of big tobacco, targeting teens with potentially dangerous products while masking the science in public. And then there's a professor of psychology from San Diego State University who says, if you believe that R.J. Reynolds, big, huge tobacco company, should have been more truthful about the link between smoking and lung cancer, then you should probably believe that Facebook should be more upfront about links to depression among teenagers. I mean, and again, to me, you listen to this show, you know that we're always coming down on people not doing their jobs, that, Congress isn't doing their job. Here they're trying, give them credit. They're trying to do it. And to be compared to big tobacco, I mean, that is something that if I'm Facebook, that's a shot across the bow. For some of you younger listeners, you need to remember that big tobacco said women who were pregnant back in the 50s should smoke because the smoking would stop them from eating and they wouldn't gain so much weight. While true, they weren't forthcoming with the information that it could very easily cause breathing difficulties within their newborn babies. Is what Facebook's doing the equivalent of that? Or do they know that they're hurting our teenagers? And yet they're so interested in these teenagers becoming adults and using Facebook or whatever new social media that they come up with, that they just want to keep them. Justin, you used a term the other day, customer for life, that they just, we're going to get you when you're young, and then we'll switch gears and give you this and this and this, but you're going to be our customer forever. I mean, that's kind of the social media outlook right now. Is that what's going on here? I mean, it sure sounds like it to me, and that's the comparison of some psychology professors and U.S. senators that they see this is happening.
You may be sitting at home and saying, right, but smoking, Lance, I mean, this is, cancer and death. I mean, surely Instagram couldn't possibly be causing the same issues. Well, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Lance, says the rate of suicide for those ages 10 to 24 has increased nearly 60% between 2007 and 2018. And the CDC reports that suicide is now the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 34 as of 2018.
I would have said the first, but so I'm glad that you looked that up and gave that to me, because I I'm not surprised that it's second. Actually, I'm surprised that it's second. I would have thought it's been first because this is a major issue with young people.
And it's literally killing. I mean, they're literally dying,
health,
right? It's not like, oh man, they're just sad.
They're just soft.
Yeah,
or, they're soft or they're this. No, this is real, people. And the thing is, we talk about it like it's a drug, but we're not allowed to look at, because of Facebook holding on to the information, we're not really allowed to look at what's happening because of it.
Until now. And we know that it's addictive. And that's part of the reason that things haven't changed too, right? Because many of the changes that have been recommended by Facebook's own staff have been resisted by upper level leadership because they're concerned that it will decrease user engagement. And at the end of the day, right, all that really matters is how many hours a day can we keep you on here. Doesn't matter if it ruins your brain. Doesn't matter if you should go do something else. We just want you to think you need it. And we want to give you that, right, dopamine release that brings you some kind of reward. And then we beat up on you for a few hours and then do it again the minute that we think we're going to lose you. And you're right. It does sound a lot like big tobacco, right? We're going to get you hooked and then you won't be able to resist. You'll spend all your time with us, and time is basically money. And you might hate your life. This could kill you, but we're making money. So that's what counts. Where do we go from here? What do we do about this? And are these just, I mean, it's like, okay, so Instagram, right? We're having problems with teenagers, body issues. We've got elites that are playing by a different set of rules. These don't sound like new problems. I mean, none of us are probably shocked by the fact that Facebook knows this stuff. I mean, we didn't know how much they knew, but I think we all kind of could have guessed, right, that we knew these were problems. We just didn't know how much of problems, and we didn't know just how disgusting what Facebook has been doing is. But now we do. So is it really just these, or does this open up a can of worms to a bigger set of problems? Well, again, surprise, the answer is yes, or at least Lance and I think so. To find out what problems it links to, though, you're going to have to keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
From elites like politicians and celebrities being exempt from Facebook's rules to teenage boys and girls spending time on Instagram and becoming increasingly upset about their own personal image, and in some cases even leading to severe mental health issues, which can result in suicide and death. There's some big problems at the companies that Facebook owns, and surprise, it knows those problems exist. And in fact, much of what we've referenced today is from Facebook's change too, right? Because many of the changes that have been recommended by Facebook's own staff have been resisted by upper level leadership because they're concerned that it will decrease user engagement. And at the end of the day, right, all that really matters is how many hours a day can we keep you on here. Doesn't matter if it ruins your brain. Doesn't matter if you should go do something else. We just want you to think you need it. And we want to give you that, right, dopamine release that brings you some kind of reward. And then we beat up on you for a few hours and then do it again the minute that we think we're going to lose you. And you're right. It does sound a lot like big tobacco, right? We're going to get you hooked and then you won't be able to resist. You'll spend all your time with us, and time is basically money. And you might hate your life. This could kill you, but we're making money. So that's what counts. Where do we go from here? What do we do about this? And are these just, I mean, it's like, okay, so Instagram, right? We're having problems with teenagers, body issues. We've got elites that are playing by a different set of rules. These don't sound like new problems. I mean, none of us are probably shocked by the fact that Facebook knows this stuff. I mean, we didn't know how much they knew, but I think we all kind of could have guessed, right, that we knew these were problems. We just didn't know how much of problems, and we didn't know just how disgusting what Facebook has been doing is. But now we do. So is it really just these, or does this open up a can of worms to a bigger set of problems? Well, again, surprise, the answer is yes, or at least Lance and I think so. To find out what problems it links to, though, you're going to have to keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
From elites like politicians and celebrities being exempt from Facebook's rules to teenage boys and girls spending time on Instagram and becoming increasingly upset about their own personal image, and in some cases even leading to severe mental health issues, which can result in suicide and death. There's some big problems at the companies that Facebook owns, and surprise, it knows those problems exist. And in fact, much of what we've referenced today is from Facebook's own internal documents. In some cases, they've tried to make changes that have been unsuccessful. In other cases, changes that could have made a difference weren't implemented in the name of keeping users engaged. It should upset you. It should seem like a big problem. But if it didn't seem big enough, and I told Lance this before the show, I think it's really critical that our listeners understand these are not just the surface level issues they seem either, right? Because with the elite being allowed to play by a different set of rules, it just perpetuates what we know exists in the rest of society, right? That if you reach a certain level of success, you don't have to abide by the same rules as everybody else. And in a nation such as the United States, where supposedly everybody's supposed to be on the same footing, especially when it comes to things like free speech, this is a perfect example of how that is not the case. And Facebook, remember, is a platform that reaches billions of users worldwide. We're not talking about 10 people that got special privileges. We're literally talking about millions of people across the world that are exempt from Facebook's rules, which allows them to spread misinformation. It allows things like the January 6th incident to happen. And whether or not, who's to blame for January 6th, we're not getting into that. All we're saying is what happened on January 6th is an example of something that may not have happened if everybody had to play by the same rules on Facebook. But they don't. They don't have to play by the same rules. And it's just one of many examples. Pornography being released, illegal pornography because it's without the person who's in its consent being released on Facebook to children, to 50 million people, right? I mean, these are serious problems, but it's, again, that notion that you get to play by a different set of rules. The other thing, Lance, that I mentioned is on the Instagram side, right? You've got young people who we increasingly, older generations are observing, anxious. They have problems interacting socially in person, and they seem very pessimistic. And I don't know about you, but it's not rocket science to draw a parallel here and say that if you're insecure and you're spending all this time on a platform that makes you hate who you are, it's really hard to be optimistic about life. It's really difficult because we're not talking about 10 minutes that they feel this way a day, right? This is hours that they're spending on these platforms every day. So I think it's pervasive in that it connects to all of these other problems.
Well, and I think, you hit on a couple of things. It's the number of people that are on these sites is just astronomical to me, because I'm someone who obviously doesn't spend a lot of time here. But when I talk to young people and adults and everybody, it's like I'm outside the norm, and then it's around the world. That's the biggest thing that I learned in starting to read these articles. Read 5 of them so far, but just in these first 2, they mention how, we think, the United States, but there are billions of Facebook users around the world. So this is affecting not just the United States, but around the world. And you say, well, so what? Well, that's affecting the thought processes of other people and how they perceive us and how they think of us and how they want problems solved around the world, which is all tied into how we as the United States are perceived around the world, and also what thoughts are going on and how things are being handled and what's being done about it. And if we're going out there and selling the idea that you should be like the United States, and then people say, yeah, they point out, look at Facebook. Why do we want that? Look what it's doing to not only your young people, but our young people, and what it's doing. We're going to get into human trafficking and drug cartels and the different negative groups that are using Facebook. And Facebook knows about it and is doing nothing about it because it's being democratic and giving everybody an equal opportunity. As we uncover that these are the problems, and in Facebook's defense, just to give both sides, they are obviously recognizing this and have tried some different things. And they say, well, it's getting better. Okay. But better is kind of a really weak way to describe something, right? I mean, it's like, there is this water that I'm drinking is 90% toxic. Well, I poured it through a dishcloth. Now it's only 70% toxic. So it's better, folks. I just improved it by 20%. My water is 20% cleaner, but it's still 70% of my water is full of toxic things. So better is that kind of esoteric word that doesn't really tell us very much. So it's scary when you think about it. And I guess the biggest thing is many of us have talked about this with young people using these sites and people depending on these sites to get their news and their information. But now we're getting factual information. We're not suppositioning. We're getting factual information from the company itself about the negativity that it's causing.
In terms of the pervasive nature of Instagram, fully 72% of teenagers 13 to 17 use the video sharing platform. Video and picture sharing platform. And so, 7 in 10 for sure use Instagram. So it touches their lives. I mean,
middle school through high school,
right.
13 to 17, middle school through high school. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and as we know, right, Facebook is looking at Instagram for kids, which the article actually points out is in fact still on the table. They have not backed down from that, even though they already know the issues that it causes for their teenage crowd. So now you might even get introduced to it at a younger age. But I think, Lance, that we've issued a pretty strong riposte today of Facebook and what they've been doing. I mean, yes, we've tried to share, quote unquote, their side of it. They're aware of it. I think what you're sensing from Lance and I, hopefully what you're feeling at home, is that it's inadequate, right? They are a business and they're out there to make money. And the way they make money is by getting you to spend time there. It doesn't matter if you're depressed while you're spending time there or you're happy. And it turns out, as you're going to find out from some of these future pieces we're going to be doing, that in fact, it's easier to get people to stick around if you make them angry. So it's going to be very reluctant to make any changes that discourage youth interaction, especially when it's facing aggressive competition from Snapchat and TikTok, of which, by the way, as we've covered in previous episodes, it has copied many of the features of to keep the users from running to those other platforms. So we know that it's in the game to stay, or at least that's its goal. The question is we are a public okay with how this is operating? And if you're not, there are things you can do about it. One thing you can do is join the conversation here on The State of Us by sending us an email, podcast@thestateofus.org. What do you think about this? Are you as upset as Lance and I are? We've got more episodes coming. You're going to be pretty upset, I think, at Facebook by the time we're done, because there's a lot to be mad about. So, but there's also good reason to believe, because in the past we've done it, succeeded at changing companies that cause problems for society. There is that possibility. And that's why we have these conversations, right, Lance?
That is correct. Our mission here at True Chat is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And that's what we tried to do today. And again, if you think differently than we do, and it's all about free enterprise and the mighty dollar, let us know. We'd be glad to hear and entertain your thoughts, because that's what we try to do. And that is just bring up all sides of the issue and get the discussion and the conversation